Have you ever felt like the more you think, the lonelier you become? Like the deeper you understand the world, the harder it is to connect with people around you? If you've ever had that feeling, trust me, you are not alone. Throughout history, some of the most brilliant minds, the very individuals who changed the course of civilization, were outcasts in their own time. They were ridiculed, silenced, abandoned, or even persecuted not because they were wrong, but because they were right too soon. Socrates was sentenced to death for asking too many questions. Galileo was condemned for proving the Earth wasn't the center of the universe. Nikola Tesla died broke and forgotten despite shaping the future of energy. Alan Turing, the father of modern computing, was punished rather than praised for his genius. These were the people who saw what others could not, who thought beyond their time. And yet, their intelligence came at a cost, a price paid in loneliness, rejection, and misunderstanding. But why does this happen? Why does society resist intelligence, even when it desperately needs it? Is it human nature to fear those who think differently? And most importantly, if you are someone who sees the world in a deeper way, how do you survive in a society that doesn't always welcome intelligence? In today's video, we're diving deep into the paradox of intelligence, why being smart can feel like a curse, why great thinkers throughout history were cast aside, and most importantly, how you can navigate a world that sometimes seems to fear deep thought. This is not just another motivational video. We're talking about real psychology, real history, and real strategies for those who feel like outsiders because of their intellect. But before we begin, if you love content that makes you think, question, and challenge conventional wisdom, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. If you want to support the channel and help us create more deep dive videos like this, consider using the Super Thanks feature or joining our community as a channel member. Every bit of support helps us keep bringing you content that mainstream media won't. Now, let's get into it. Intelligence has always been a double-edged sword. On one hand, it has driven humanity forward, leading to scientific discoveries, technological advancements, and groundbreaking philosophical insights. On the other hand, those who possess exceptional intelligence often find themselves isolated, misunderstood, or even feared by society. The paradox is undeniable. While intelligence is celebrated in theory, in practice, highly intelligent individuals frequently experience alienation. This isn't just a matter of social awkwardness or personal differences, it's a fundamental aspect of human psychology and social dynamics. When someone encounters an individual with superior physical strength, they might admire them or even aspire to reach the same level of fitness. When faced with a person who is wealthy, the reaction might range from envy to respect. But when people interact with someone of exceptional intelligence, the response is often discomfort, skepticism, or even outright hostility. This reaction isn't accidental. It stems from a deep-rooted psychological phenomenon known as the mirror effect, the tendency of people to feel exposed or inadequate when confronted with someone who operates at a higher intellectual level. The mere presence of a highly intelligent person can make others feel their own limitations more acutely, even if the intelligent person makes no effort to assert superiority. Throughout history, some of the greatest minds have suffered because of this reaction. Socrates, one of the founding figures of Western philosophy, was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth and questioning the accepted beliefs of Athenian society. In reality, his crime was simply encouraging people to think critically, to challenge authority, and to seek deeper understanding, an endeavor that made those in power uncomfortable. Galileo, centuries later, was persecuted for his scientific discoveries that contradicted the religious doctrine of his time. Nikola Tesla, a visionary in the field of electricity, died penniless and largely ignored, despite the fact that his innovations shaped the modern world. Their stories illustrate a recurring theme. Society often resists those who think differently, especially when their insights challenge widely held beliefs. But why does this happen? The answer lies deep within human nature. The human brain is wired not for the pursuit of truth, but for survival. For most of history, being accepted by the group was more important than being right. Our ancestors lived in tribes where social harmony meant safety. Being cast out or perceived as different could mean death. Even today, this instinct remains ingrained in our psychology. People subconsciously prioritize social acceptance over intellectual exploration. This is why charisma and confidence are often more valued than intelligence in social settings. A person who speaks with unwavering certainty even if they are completely wrong tends to be more persuasive than someone who presents a complex, nuanced argument. This preference for simplicity over complexity is also evident in modern media. Social media algorithms prioritize engagement, which means that emotionally charged, easy-to-digest content spreads faster than well-reasoned, thought-provoking discussions. The more intellectual an idea, the harder it is to package into a short, viral-friendly message. As a result, deep thinkers often struggle to find a broad audience, while populist figures who oversimplify issues thrive. The world favors entertainment over enlightenment, and this has profound consequences for how intelligence is perceived and valued. Another critical factor in society's discomfort with intelligence is cognitive bias, systematic errors in thinking that affect the way people interpret information. One of the most relevant biases is the Dunning-Kruger effect, which states that people with low ability tend to overestimate their competence, while those who are highly skilled or knowledgeable often doubt themselves. This creates a frustrating paradox. Those who understand the complexities of an issue tend to express themselves with caution and nuance, while those who know very little often speak with unshakable confidence. The result is that deep thinkers are frequently ignored, dismissed, or even ridiculed by those who believe they already have all the answers. Similarly, status quo bias explains why people resist new ideas, even when those ideas have clear merit. The human brain prefers familiarity over uncertainty. Intelligence, by its nature, questions established norms and seeks deeper truths, which can feel threatening to those who find comfort in conventional wisdom. When people encounter an argument that contradicts their existing beliefs, they often don't change their minds. Instead, they double down on their existing views. This is known as the backfire effect. Another reason why deep thinkers often struggle to gain widespread acceptance. Social settings further amplify this resistance. Research shows that people react differently to intelligence in one-on-one interactions compared to group settings. When speaking privately with a highly intelligent person, people may feel intrigued or even inspired. However, in a group setting, the dynamic shifts. Status becomes more important, and individuals who feel outshined by a deep thinker may instinctively try to undermine them to maintain their own social standing. This explains why intelligent individuals often find meaningful conversations in intimate discussions but struggle to engage in large social environments. Schopenhauer, one of the most brutally honest philosophers, argued that intelligence is not a gift, but a burden. He believed that the smarter a person is, the more they struggle to connect with society. According to him, most people are driven by what he called the will to live, a blind, instinctual force that prioritizes pleasure, comfort, and survival. Highly intelligent individuals, on the other hand, develop the will to truth, an insatiable desire to understand reality, even when it leads to discomfort or isolation. This fundamental difference in motivation creates a disconnect between deep thinkers and the majority of society. Where most people find meaning in relationships, entertainment, and material success, intellectuals often see these things as distractions from deeper existential questions. Schopenhauer's philosophy resonates strongly with the experiences of many intellectuals. The more someone understands human nature, the harder it is for them to relate to others. They see through deception, recognize the absurdity of social conventions, and struggle with small talk and superficial interactions. While most people are content with routine pleasures, deep thinkers crave meaningful discussions, making them feel out of place in everyday conversations. They often find themselves misunderstood, not because they are arrogant or dismissive, but because they process the world on a different level. This raises an important question. If intelligence leads to isolation, how can deep thinkers navigate society without feeling completely alienated? The answer lies in understanding the forces working against them and adapting accordingly. One approach is to seek out like-minded individuals, whether through books, online communities, or intellectual circles where deep conversations are welcomed rather than discouraged. Another strategy is to communicate ideas in a way that resonates with others. Albert Einstein once said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." Learning to convey complex ideas in an accessible manner can bridge the gap between intelligence and relatability. Additionally, Schopenhauer advised intellectuals to be selective about when and where they share their deepest thoughts. Not every situation calls for profound discussions, and not everyone is ready to engage with complex ideas. Sometimes, choosing silence over confrontation is the wiser path. Finally, embracing solitude as a strength rather than a weakness can be a powerful tool. Many of the greatest minds in history found their most profound insights not in social acceptance, but in moments of deep introspection. Ultimately, society's fear of intelligence isn't about intelligence itself, it's about what intelligence reveals. It exposes flaws in existing systems, questions long-held beliefs, and challenges people to confront their own limitations. This makes deep thinkers both invaluable and, at times, unwelcome. But history has shown that while intellectuals may struggle for acceptance in their lifetimes, their ideas often shape the future. So if you've ever felt isolated because of your thoughts, know this: you are not broken. You are simply seeing the world for what it really is. There's something unsettling about being in the presence of someone who is significantly more intelligent than you. Unlike physical strength, which can be admired, or wealth, which can be envied, intelligence has a unique way of making people feel inadequate. This is because intelligence does something that other forms of superiority don't. It forces people to confront their own limitations. The human mind is wired to protect itself from discomfort, and few things are as uncomfortable as realizing that your understanding of the world is limited. This is why intelligence often triggers psychological defense mechanisms rather than admiration. When people encounter someone who is physically stronger, they rarely feel personally attacked. Strength is tangible, and its advantages are obvious. Someone who is stronger can lift more weight, run faster, or be better in a fight. This doesn't diminish the self-worth of others because it doesn't challenge their identity in any fundamental way. If anything, people often look up to those who are physically superior, viewing them as leaders or protectors. The same is true for wealth. While envy might arise when seeing someone who is significantly richer, there is no deep existential threat involved. People rationalize wealth disparities with explanations like hard work, luck, or privilege, but they do not typically feel as though their very identity is being undermined. Intelligence, however, operates differently. It is not just an external trait, it is tied to how people define themselves. Most people take pride in their ability to think, reason, and understand the world. When they encounter someone who operates on a much higher intellectual level, it's not just a matter of that person knowing more, it's a direct challenge to their perception of their own competence. This is why intelligence often provokes resentment rather than admiration. Unlike strength or wealth, which are easily recognized and categorized, intelligence is subtle and far-reaching. A highly intelligent person doesn't just outperform others in specific tasks, they question assumptions, identify flaws in reasoning, and expose inconsistencies. This can make people feel as though their beliefs, values, and even sense of self are being threatened. This dynamic is especially apparent in the workplace. Imagine a highly competent employee who quickly understands complex problems, suggests innovative solutions, and challenges inefficient practices. At first, this might be seen as valuable, but over time, colleagues and even managers might start to feel uneasy. The presence of someone who is constantly thinking ahead, who sees solutions others don't, or who challenges conventional wisdom can create an unspoken tension. Other employees might feel as though their contributions are less significant in comparison. Instead of viewing the intelligent employee as an asset, they might perceive them as a threat, someone who makes them look bad or who could expose their weaknesses. This can lead to passive-aggressive behavior, exclusion from group discussions, or even outright hostility. This isn't a rare phenomenon. Many workplaces prioritize social cohesion over individual brilliance. Someone who is confident but average in intelligence is often preferred over someone who is highly intelligent but socially disruptive. Confidence and charisma are valued because they make people feel comfortable, whereas deep intelligence often does the opposite. Research has shown that people gravitate towards those who project certainty, even if their ideas are simplistic. This is why leaders who speak in broad, confident terms tend to be more persuasive than those who offer complex, nuanced arguments. It is not necessarily about being right, it is about making people feel secure in what they already believe. The discomfort triggered by intelligence is further exacerbated by the mirror effect. which is a psychological phenomenon where people react negatively to those who reflect their own inadequacies back at them. A deep thinker, even without intending to, holds up a mirror to others, making them aware of their own intellectual shortcomings. This is not about arrogance or superiority often. Intelligent individuals are not trying to prove anything, but their presence alone can make others feel as though they are being judged, even when no judgment is taking place. This is why intelligent people are often met with resistance in social situations. Their insights, rather than being appreciated, can be dismissed as overthinking, pessimism, or unnecessary complexity. This also explains why people often reject new ideas, even when those ideas are supported by overwhelming evidence. When someone presents information that contradicts deeply held beliefs, the brain's natural reaction is not curiosity but defense. The human mind is not wired to seek truth as much as it is wired to maintain stability. This is why facts alone rarely change minds. Instead of reconsidering their stance, people often double down on their existing beliefs, a phenomenon known as the backfire effect. When intelligence challenges the status quo, it doesn't just introduce new information, it forces people to question their worldview, which can feel deeply unsettling. History is filled with examples of intelligent individuals who faced backlash not because they were wrong, but because they saw what others were not ready to accept. Galileo was condemned not because his scientific discoveries were flawed, but because they threatened the established order. Charles Darwin's theory of evolution was met with fierce resistance, not because the evidence was weak, but because it challenged religious and societal beliefs. Even in modern times, thinkers who question prevailing narratives often face significant opposition, not because their ideas lack merit, but because they introduce discomfort. This fear of intelligence is not limited to academia or the workplace. It extends into everyday interactions as well. Imagine a casual conversation where someone brings up a complex philosophical or scientific concept. The reaction is often awkward silence or an attempt to change the subject. People generally prefer discussions that reinforce their existing knowledge rather than ones that challenge them to think in new ways. This is why small talk and surface-level conversations dominate social interactions. It's not that people lack the capacity for deep thinking, but that deep thinking requires effort, and effort is not always welcomed in casual settings. One might wonder if there is a way for highly intelligent individuals to navigate this challenge without feeling alienated. The answer lies in understanding human psychology and adapting accordingly. Recognizing that intelligence can be perceived as a threat allows one to approach conversations with a sense of awareness. Instead of overwhelming others with complex ideas, framing insights in a way that is accessible and engaging can make a significant difference. This is why some of the most influential thinkers in history were also great communicators. Albert Einstein famously said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." The ability to distill complex ideas into digestible explanations is often more valuable than raw intelligence alone. Another approach is to find like-minded individuals who appreciate intellectual depth. While mainstream society may resist deep thinkers, there are always communities, online or in person, where curiosity and critical thinking are encouraged. Seeking out these environments can provide a sense of belonging that might be lacking in broader social circles. It's also important for intelligent individuals to recognize that not every situation requires deep analysis. Sometimes, engaging in lighthearted conversation, even if it feels trivial, is a way to connect with others. Intelligence does not always have to be on display. Knowing when to share insights and when to simply listen is a skill in itself. Ultimately, the discomfort that intelligence creates is not about intelligence itself, but about what it reveals. It exposes gaps in understanding, highlights contradictions, and forces people to reevaluate their assumptions. This can be unsettling, but it is also necessary for growth. While society may not always embrace intelligence, it needs it. Progress has never been driven by those who conform, but by those who dare to think differently. Those who recognize this dynamic and learn how to navigate it will not only avoid unnecessary resistance but will also be able to share their insights in a way that resonates with the world around them. The human brain did not evolve to seek absolute truth. It evolved primarily for survival, and survival has always depended on social cohesion rather than intellectual accuracy. For most of human history, People lived in small tribes where being part of the group meant safety. Being excluded or cast out often led to death, whether from starvation, predation, or a lack of support. This means that the human mind is wired to prioritize belonging over independent thinking. Intelligence, especially when it challenges the established norms of a group, can be perceived as a threat because it disrupts the harmony that has historically been essential for survival. Neuroscience supports this idea. The amygdala, often referred to as the brain's fear center, is responsible for processing threats. Studies have shown that when people feel intellectually inferior, their amygdala becomes highly active. In other words, the brain reacts to intelligence in a way that is similar to how it reacts to physical danger. This suggests that intelligence, when perceived as a challenge to one's beliefs or competence, can trigger the same kind of fear response that might arise when facing an actual predator. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes sense. When a person introduces new ideas that contradict long-standing traditions or deeply held beliefs, it destabilizes the social fabric. And because the human brain prioritizes stability over intellectual exploration, it instinctively resists such disruptions. This resistance to intellectual superiority is why, throughout history, intelligent individuals who challenge societal norms have often been met with hostility. Galileo's story is one of the most well-known examples. When he provided evidence that the Earth revolved around the Sun, he wasn't just presenting a scientific discovery, he was undermining the entire religious and political structure of his time. The Catholic Church, which derived much of its authority from the belief that Earth was the center of the universe, saw Galileo's findings not as a step toward truth but as a direct threat to their power. His intelligence, rather than being celebrated, was seen as dangerous. He was tried for heresy and placed under house arrest for the remainder of his life, despite the fact that his discoveries were later proven to be correct. This pattern repeats itself across different eras and cultures. When Charles Darwin introduced the theory of evolution, it was met with intense backlash, not because the evidence was weak, but because it directly contradicted religious teachings that had been deeply ingrained in society for centuries. More recently, Nikola Tesla, despite his extraordinary contributions to electrical engineering, struggled financially and died alone, largely ignored by the very society that benefited from his genius. His ideas about wireless energy and free electricity challenged the interests of powerful business magnates who profited from conventional energy distribution. And as a result, his work was undermined or dismissed. The reason intelligence is often met with resistance is that it forces people to reevaluate their assumptions. And this is not something the human brain enjoys doing. Psychological studies show that when people encounter information that contradicts their beliefs, they don't simply reconsider their views. Instead, they often double down on them. This phenomenon, known as the backfire effect, occurs because changing one's beliefs is psychologically costly. It requires admitting that one was wrong, which can be deeply uncomfortable. Since intelligence often introduces complexity, uncertainty, and new perspectives that challenge the status quo, it tends to be met with skepticism rather than acceptance. Another evolutionary factor at play is the preference for social dominance over intellectual merit. In many societies, those who rise to power are not necessarily the most intelligent but rather those who are best at navigating social structures. Intelligence alone does not guarantee influence. In fact, it can be a disadvantage if it makes a person less willing to conform. Research has shown that people are more likely to follow leaders who display confidence, even when their ideas are flawed, rather than those who offer nuanced, complex arguments. This is why populist leaders, charismatic speakers, and media personalities often have more influence than scholars, scientists, or philosophers. It is not that society doesn't value intelligence, it is that it values social cohesion and certainty even more. This preference for simplicity is also reflected in the way information spreads in the modern world. Social media, designed to maximize engagement, prioritizes emotionally charged, easy-to-digest content over well-reasoned, complex discussions. The result is that intellectually rigorous ideas struggle to gain traction. The same evolutionary biases that once helped humans survive in tribal settings favoring consensus over individual insight are now amplified by algorithms that reward sensationalism over depth. In this environment, Deep thinkers find themselves at odds with a system that rewards confidence over correctness, entertainment over enlightenment, and conformity over critical thought. The implications of this are profound. If intelligence is inherently disruptive to social stability, then highly intelligent individuals must navigate a world that is, in many ways, designed to resist them. This means that intelligence is not always an advantage in social settings. A person who questions too much, who challenges authority too frequently, or who points out inconsistencies too openly may find themselves ostracized, not because they are wrong, but because they are perceived as a threat. This is why many of history's greatest thinkers were either ignored in their lifetimes or actively suppressed. It also explains why many intelligent individuals feel a sense of loneliness or disconnection. The more one understands, the harder it becomes to engage in everyday conversations that prioritize comfort over complexity. Small talk, while socially necessary, often feels trivial to someone who is used to exploring deeper ideas. The difficulty in relating to others on a surface level can lead to frustration, isolation, or even a sense of alienation. This is not because intelligent individuals are incapable of social interaction, but because their way of processing the world is fundamentally different from that of the majority. Understanding these dynamics can help highly intelligent individuals navigate them more effectively. Recognizing that intelligence can be perceived as a threat allows one to approach conversations and relationships with greater awareness. Instead of overwhelming others with information or immediately challenging their assumptions, it may be more effective to introduce ideas gradually, in a way that does not provoke immediate resistance. This is not about diluting intelligence but about understanding human psychology and adapting communication styles accordingly. At the same time, it is important for intelligent individuals to find spaces where their depth of thought is appreciated. Not everyone will value complexity, but there are always communities, whether in academia, specialized industries, or intellectual circles, where deep thinking is encouraged. Seeking out these environments can provide a sense of belonging that may be difficult to find in mainstream society. Another strategy is to develop the ability to frame ideas in a way that resonates with others. Many of history's most influential intellectuals were not just brilliant thinkers but also effective communicators. Albert Einstein, for example, was able to explain highly complex scientific concepts in ways that were accessible to the general public. This ability to translate deep insights into understandable language is a skill in itself and can make a significant difference in how intelligence is received. Ultimately, the tension between intelligence and social acceptance is unlikely to disappear. It is rooted in the way the human brain evolved, in the way societies function, and in the way information spreads. Intelligence challenges the familiar, disrupts the comfortable, and introduces uncertainty, but it is also what drives progress. While the world may resist deep thinkers in the moment, it is often their ideas that shape the future. Recognizing this paradox allows for a more strategic approach to navigating a society that, at times, fears what it needs the most. Schopenhauer famously stated, "A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial." He believed that intelligence, rather than being a gift that leads to fulfillment, is often a burden that isolates those who possess it. The reason for this is simple. Intelligence fundamentally changes the way a person interacts with the world. While the average person seeks comfort, pleasure, and social belonging, the highly intelligent seek truth, meaning, and understanding. This creates an inevitable conflict, one that makes deep thinkers feel disconnected from those around them. Not because they wish to be isolated, but because their way of perceiving reality is fundamentally different. For most people, life is about finding stability and happiness through relationships, entertainment, and material success. They value familiarity, routine, and the social norms that provide structure and predictability. This is not inherently negative, it is simply how human nature evolved. Societal cohesion has always been crucial for survival, and part of that cohesion comes from shared beliefs, communal rituals, and a collective agreement on what is considered meaningful. The problem arises when someone questions these structures, introducing doubt where there was once certainty. Highly intelligent individuals often do exactly that. They analyze, dissect, and deconstruct ideas, recognizing inconsistencies, hypocrisies, and contradictions that others might overlook or choose to ignore. The result is that they find it difficult to engage in conversations that revolve around superficialities, which leads to a sense of alienation. This is why many intellectuals struggle with social interactions. Small talk feels meaningless, and discussions based on blind acceptance of tradition or popular opinion feel hollow. A deep thinker doesn't merely accept that something is just the way it is. They ask why. They challenge assumptions. They seek explanations that go beyond the surface level. This makes them fascinating to those who appreciate depth but frustrating to those who prefer simplicity. When a highly intelligent person questions commonly accepted truths, they are often met with resistance, not because their questions are invalid, but because they disrupt the sense of certainty that most people rely on. Nikola Tesla is a perfect example of this dynamic. His mind was decades, if not centuries, ahead of his time. While others were content with the existing technology, Tesla envisioned wireless electricity, free energy, and a world powered by limitless possibilities. But society was not ready for his ideas. Powerful industrialists, who had a financial interest in maintaining the status quo, saw him as a threat. His genius, rather than being celebrated, was viewed as disruptive. He spent his later years in isolation, largely ignored by the very world that would later recognize his contributions as groundbreaking. He died poor, alone in a New York hotel room, while lesser minds profited from his work. His story reflects the tragic reality of many intellectuals. When their ideas challenge the existing order, they are often dismissed or forgotten in their lifetime, only to be revered long after they are gone. This struggle is not limited to historical figures. Even today, intelligence can be a social liability. In school, highly intelligent students often feel disconnected from their peers. They see patterns others don't, ask questions that teachers struggle to answer, and become frustrated with the slow pace of learning. Rather than being encouraged, they are often told to conform, to tone it down, to stop making others feel uncomfortable. In the workplace, the same pattern emerges. A person who thinks critically, who questions ineffective processes, or who suggests radical improvements is not always rewarded. Instead, they may be seen as a disruptor, a troublemaker, someone who makes others feel inadequate simply by being competent. This explains why intelligence and loneliness often go hand in hand. It's not that highly intelligent individuals don't want social connection, it's that meaningful connection is hard to find. Most social interactions operate within a framework of shared interests, common knowledge, and mutual understanding. When someone thinks on a level that others cannot relate to, those connections become difficult to sustain. This is why many deep thinkers gravitate towards books, philosophy, and solitary pursuits. They are not necessarily antisocial. They simply struggle to find people with whom they can truly connect. Schopenhauer recognized this reality and argued that solitude is not something to be feared but embraced. He believed that true intellectual and creative work could only be done in isolation, free from the distractions and superficialities of social life. While most people seek companionship as a means of fulfillment, the deep thinker finds fulfillment in ideas. This is not to say that intelligent individuals do not desire relationships or connection, but rather that their idea of connection is different. They do not crave validation or mindless entertainment. They seek discussions that challenge their minds. Relationships built on intellectual and philosophical depth, and a sense of purpose that goes beyond mere survival. This is why intelligent individuals are often drawn to niche communities. Whether in academia, online forums, or specialized fields, they search for others who think as they do, who value curiosity and complexity over comfort and simplicity. In these spaces, they can engage in conversations that stimulate their intellect rather than stifle it. But even within these communities, the same challenges persist. Intelligence alone does not guarantee compatibility, and many deep thinkers still find themselves struggling to relate on an emotional level, even if they connect intellectually. Another reason intelligence can be isolating is that it often leads to a heightened awareness of human nature. The more one understands about psychology, history, and philosophy, the more one sees the flaws, contradictions, and irrationalities that govern society. While others take comfort in religion, cultural traditions, or political ideologies, the deep thinker sees these as construct systems created by human beings to impose order on an inherently chaotic world. This can lead to existential frustration. If one sees through the illusions that provide others with meaning, where does one find meaning for oneself? This question has plagued some of the greatest minds in history. many of whom struggled with depression, disillusionment, or a sense of purposelessness. The connection between intelligence and existential crisis is well documented. Schopenhauer himself was deeply pessimistic about life, believing that the pursuit of happiness was ultimately futile. He saw human existence as a cycle of suffering and temporary relief, driven by desires that could never be permanently satisfied. For the average person, distractions, entertainment, relationships, material success provide a buffer against this realization. But for the highly intelligent, these distractions are insufficient. They cannot turn off their minds, cannot stop asking questions, cannot accept easy answers. This is both their greatest strength and their greatest burden. Despite all of this, intelligence is not inherently a curse. It can lead to profound achievements, deep personal fulfillment, and a legacy that outlives the individual. The challenge is learning how to navigate a world that does not always value intelligence in the way it claims to. This means understanding when to speak and when to stay silent, when to challenge and when to let things go, when to seek solitude and when to reach out. It also means recognizing that not everyone will appreciate depth, but that does not diminish its worth. Tesla's tragedy was not just that society failed to recognize his genius in time, but that he had no mechanism to navigate the resistance he faced. He refused to compromise, refused to adapt, refused to play the games that less intelligent but more socially adept individuals played. While his principles were admirable, they contributed to his downfall. This is a lesson for highly intelligent individuals today. Intelligence alone is not enough. Understanding human nature, learning how to communicate ideas in ways that resonate, and knowing when to retreat and when to engage are just as important as intellect itself. Schopenhauer understood that intelligence comes with a cost, but he also believed that it provides something few others experience: a deeper, richer understanding of reality. The loneliness it brings is not a sign of failure but a reflection of seeing the world differently. The key is not to suppress intelligence to fit in, but to find ways to use it meaningfully, even in a world that does not always welcome it. Intelligent people often struggle to find their place in society, not because they lack social skills, but because their way of thinking is fundamentally different from the majority. They tend to see connections others miss, question assumptions most people take for granted, and seek depth where many prefer simplicity. This can create friction in social settings, where most conversations revolve around surface-level topics, and unconventional ideas are met with skepticism or resistance. To navigate this reality, intelligent individuals must learn how to adapt, not by diminishing their intelligence, but by understanding how to engage with the world more effectively. One of the most important strategies for intelligent people is choosing their social environment wisely. Not everyone is open to deep conversations, abstract thinking, or philosophical discussions. In many social settings, particularly casual or workplace interactions, people prioritize harmony over intellectual depth. Conversations often center around shared experiences, popular culture, and uncontroversial topics, not because people lack the capacity for deep thought, but because these discussions maintain social cohesion. An intelligent person who constantly brings up complex ideas or challenges commonly held beliefs may unintentionally alienate themselves, not because they are wrong, but because they disrupt the flow of social interactions. Understanding this can help highly intelligent individuals avoid frustration. Instead of expecting everyone to engage in deep discussions, they should recognize which environments are receptive to such conversations and seek those out. Another crucial skill is learning how to communicate complex ideas in a way that resonates with others. Albert Einstein famously said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." This doesn't mean dumbing down ideas, but rather structuring them in a way that makes them accessible. Many intelligent people struggle with this because they think in layers of complexity. Their thoughts are often interconnected, abstract, or nuanced, making it difficult to condense them into a straightforward explanation. However, communication is not just about intelligence, it's about clarity. A brilliant idea that is poorly explained will go unnoticed, while a simple idea that is communicated effectively can have a massive impact. This is why some of the most influential thinkers in history were not just intelligent but also exceptional communicators. They knew how to break down complex subjects into relatable concepts, making them easier for the general public to grasp. One way to improve communication is by understanding the perspective of the audience. People process information through their own experiences and biases. When presenting a new idea, it helps to frame it in a way that connects to what they already understand. Instead of overwhelming people with abstract theories, intelligent individuals can use storytelling, analogies, and real-world examples to illustrate their points. For instance, when trying to explain a scientific concept, comparing it to something familiar like using the flow of water to describe electricity can make it more relatable. The goal is not to dilute the truth but to bridge the gap between complex thought and everyday understanding. Beyond improving communication, intelligent individuals should seek out communities where their way of thinking is appreciated. Trying to fit into groups that do not value depth and curiosity is not only exhausting but also unnecessary. The internet has made it easier than ever to find like-minded individuals. Whether through academic circles, online forums, or professional networks, surrounding oneself with people who share a similar intellectual curiosity provides both a sense of belonging and a space to explore ideas freely. This doesn't mean isolating oneself from the broader world but rather creating a balance between engaging with the general public and having a core group of people who understand and appreciate deeper discussions. In addition to seeking intellectual communities, applying intelligence in practical ways is essential. Society does not always value raw intelligence, it values results. A person may have brilliant insights, but if those insights do not lead to tangible outcomes, they may struggle to gain recognition or respect. This is why some of the most successful intelligent individuals are not necessarily the ones with the highest IQs but those who know how to translate ideas into real-world applications. Whether in science, business, technology, or the arts, intelligence that leads to innovation, problem-solving, or efficiency is far more impactful than intelligence that remains theoretical. This is particularly evident in entrepreneurship. Many of the world's most successful innovators did not just have great ideas, they executed them in ways that changed industries. Elon Musk, for example, is known for his vision in electric vehicles, space travel, and AI. But what makes him influential is not just his intelligence, it's his ability to bring ideas to life. Steve Jobs, despite not being an engineer himself, had an extraordinary ability to bridge technology and consumer needs, making Apple one of the most valuable companies in the world. These individuals were not just thinkers, they were doers. They understood that intelligence must be paired with execution to have a meaningful impact. Even in everyday life, applying intelligence in practical ways enhances social and professional success. This can mean using problem-solving skills to improve efficiency at work, leveraging knowledge to make informed financial decisions, or even applying psychological insights to navigate social interactions more effectively. Intelligence becomes far more valuable when it is seen as a tool for action rather than just an abstract quality. It's also important for intelligent individuals to develop emotional intelligence alongside intellectual intelligence. Many highly intelligent people find social dynamics frustrating because they prioritize logic over emotion. They may assume that presenting facts and rational arguments should be enough to change someone's mind. But human psychology doesn't work that way. People are influenced by emotions, social bonds, and subconscious biases as much as, if not more than, logical reasoning. Understanding this can help intelligent individuals approach interactions with more empathy and patience. Instead of viewing emotional responses as irrational, they can learn to navigate them effectively, making their ideas more persuasive and their relationships more fulfilling. Another challenge that intelligent individuals face is the temptation to constantly seek validation for their intellect. In a world where intelligence is often undervalued, some highly intelligent people feel the need to prove themselves, correcting others, engaging in unnecessary debates, or emphasizing their superiority. This can backfire, leading to resentment or isolation. True confidence in one's intelligence does not require external validation. It comes from knowing that intelligence is not about winning arguments but about understanding reality as accurately as possible. Instead of focusing on proving their intelligence to others, highly intelligent individuals should focus on using their intellect to create value, solve problems, and enrich their own lives and the lives of those around them. Ultimately, navigating society as an intelligent person requires a balance of self-awareness, adaptability, and purpose. Understanding that not everyone is interested in deep discussions prevents frustration. Learning how to communicate ideas effectively increases influence. Finding communities that appreciate intellectual depth fosters a sense of belonging. And applying intelligence in practical ways ensures that it is respected rather than resented. While intelligence can sometimes be isolating, it is also one of the most powerful tools for shaping the world. Those who learn how to wield it wisely can not only survive in society but thrive in it, leaving a lasting impact in ways that go beyond mere intellectual superiority. Socrates spent his life questioning commonly accepted beliefs, encouraging people to think critically rather than simply accepting what they were told. He believed that the unexamined life was not worth living, and through his method of relentless questioning, he exposed the ignorance of those who claimed to be wise. But challenging the status quo has always been dangerous. The leaders of Athens saw him as a threat, accusing him of corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. Rather than flee or compromise his principles, he chose to stand by his convictions. Accepting the death sentence handed down to him, he was forced to drink hemlock, becoming one of history's most famous martyrs for free thought. Today, Socrates is revered as one of the greatest philosophers of all time. But in his own day, he was viewed as a dangerous influence who needed to be silenced. Galileo faced a similar fate, though his crime was not philosophical dissent but scientific discovery. In the early 17th century, the dominant belief backed by the Catholic Church was that the Earth was the center of the universe, with the Sun and all other celestial bodies revolving around it. This geocentric model was deeply embedded in both religious doctrine and societal understanding. When Galileo used his telescope to gather evidence that the Earth actually orbited the Sun, he directly challenged the authority of the Church. His findings did not just disrupt scientific thought, they undermined the Church's claim to hold absolute truth. Rather than being celebrated for his revolutionary discoveries, he was put on trial, declared a heretic, and sentenced to house arrest for the rest of his life. The Church banned his works, and he was forced to recant his findings under threat of severe punishment. It would take centuries before his contributions to science were fully acknowledged. And by then, the very institution that had condemned him began to celebrate him as a pioneer of modern astronomy. Nikola Tesla, though not persecuted by the government or religious institutions, suffered a different kind of exile. A brilliant inventor and visionary, Tesla had ideas that were too advanced for his time. He developed alternating current AC, which became the foundation for modern electricity distribution. But his work was overshadowed by Thomas Edison, who pushed for direct current DC in a bitter rivalry known as the War of Currents. Edison, a better businessman and marketer, spread misinformation about AC, and Tesla found himself sidelined despite having the superior technology. Later, Tesla dreamed of providing free wireless energy to the world, a vision that threatened the financial interests of powerful industrialists like J.P. Morgan. Without financial backing, Tesla's projects failed, and he died penniless, alone in a small New York hotel room. Today, his name is synonymous with innovation, and his ideas power the modern world. Yet in his lifetime, he was dismissed as eccentric, and his genius went largely unrecognized. Alan Turing's contributions to humanity are immeasurable. During World War II, he played a pivotal role in breaking the German Enigma code, a feat that is estimated to have shortened the war by years and saved millions of lives. His work in cryptography laid the foundation for modern computing, making him one of the most influential figures in the history of technology. But despite his brilliance and his service to his country, he was not celebrated, he was persecuted. In 1952, Turing was arrested for homosexuality, which was then illegal in Britain. Instead of being honored for his contributions, he was forced to undergo chemical castration as punishment. The humiliation and physical toll led him to take his own life at the age of 41. Decades later, he was posthumously pardoned, and today he is recognized as one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. But at the time of his death, society had turned its back on him, treating him as a criminal rather than a hero. The stories of Socrates, Galileo, Tesla, and Turing reveal a common theme. Those who think ahead of their time are often met with resistance, rejection, or even punishment. It is only in hindsight that their contributions are fully appreciated. This pattern is not unique to the past, it continues in various forms today. scientists who warn about climate change, researchers who push for controversial medical advancements, and thinkers who challenge dominant political or economic structures often face intense backlash. Their ideas, though grounded in evidence and reason, are inconvenient to those who benefit from maintaining the status quo. Society, by its nature, is slow to accept radical change, even when that change is necessary. What makes this rejection even more tragic is that many of these great minds did not seek to be disruptive for its own sake. They were not rebels or agitators, they were simply driven by a relentless pursuit of truth. They saw the world differently and could not ignore the inconsistencies, inefficiencies, or falsehoods that others took for granted. Their exile was not the result of arrogance or stubbornness but a byproduct of their unwillingness to compromise intellectual integrity for social acceptance. This raises an important question. Why does society continue to reject its most brilliant minds until long after they are gone? One reason is that intelligence often threatens existing power structures. Socrates challenged political authority. Galileo defied religious dogma. Tesla disrupted economic interests. And Turing's very existence defied social norms. In each case, their intelligence was not just an abstract quality, it was a force of change. And change, no matter how necessary, is almost always met with resistance. Another reason is psychological. People do not like to feel inferior, and intelligence has a way of exposing the limitations of others. When someone presents an idea that contradicts what people have long believed, the natural reaction is not curiosity but defensiveness. The backfire effect, a cognitive bias where people react to evidence against their beliefs by clinging to those beliefs even more strongly, explains why revolutionary thinkers are often dismissed rather than embraced. It is not enough to have truth on one side if the truth is too disruptive, too unsettling, or too difficult to accept. Society will reject it, no matter how well supported it is. Yet, despite all this resistance, history proves that intelligence prevails in the long run. The very institutions that once condemned Galileo now teach his discoveries as fundamental truths. The scientific community that ignored Tesla's contributions now recognizes him as a genius. Turing, once treated as a criminal, is now seen as one of the greatest minds of the modern age. The cycle repeats. Rejection, exile, belated recognition. This is both a warning and a source of hope. It means that those who push the boundaries of knowledge must be prepared for resistance. But it also means that their work is not in vain. For those who see the world differently, who challenge assumptions, and who refuse to accept conventional wisdom without question, the lesson is clear. Rejection is often a sign that an idea is ahead of its time. While it is painful to be dismissed or misunderstood, it is also a sign of impact. Those who change the world rarely fit comfortably within it while they are alive. But history remembers them, and their contributions shape the future long after they are gone. Society has always had a complicated relationship with intelligence. On one hand, it needs deep thinkers to push the boundaries of science, philosophy, and technology. On the other hand, it often resists these individuals because they disrupt the status quo. Intelligence challenges long-held beliefs, questions authority, and introduces ideas that force people to reconsider their understanding of the world. This is uncomfortable for many, which is why intelligent individuals often experience isolation, misunderstanding, or outright rejection. But despite the struggles that come with intelligence, history has shown that it is not a curse. It is the driving force behind human progress, the spark that leads to breakthroughs, revolutions, and entirely new ways of thinking. The discomfort that society feels toward intelligence is deeply ingrained in human psychology. People naturally seek stability, familiarity, and social belonging. Radical ideas, even when they are true, create uncertainty. They threaten established power structures and force people to admit that what they believed might have been wrong. This is why so many of the greatest minds in history were rejected in their time, because their ideas were too advanced, too disruptive, or too inconvenient for the world to accept immediately. Yet, without these individuals, civilization would stagnate. Every major leap forward, whether in science, philosophy, or technology, has come from those who refused to stop questioning, who dared to think differently even when society resisted them. For those who have ever felt isolated because of their intelligence, it is important to remember that this is not a new phenomenon. Many of the most brilliant individuals throughout history walked the same path. Socrates was condemned for making people think critically. Galileo was silenced for revealing truths about the universe. Tesla died in obscurity despite his contributions to modern technology. Turing was persecuted for his personal life despite helping to win World War II. Their lives serve as both a warning and an inspiration. The world may not always recognize intelligence in the moment, but it is those very thinkers who shape the future. Feeling disconnected from the majority does not mean something is wrong with you. It means you see the world in a way that others might not yet understand. It means you are willing to question what others accept without hesitation. It means you value truth over comfort, curiosity over conformity. These qualities may make social interactions difficult at times, but they are also what drive meaningful progress. The challenge for intelligent individuals is not to suppress their thoughts to fit in, but to find ways to engage with the world effectively. This may mean learning how to communicate complex ideas in a way that resonates with others, choosing social circles that appreciate depth, or applying intelligence in ways that create real-world impact. The struggle between intelligence and social acceptance is not going away. It has existed for centuries, and it will continue to exist as long as human nature remains the same. But the reward for embracing intelligence is far greater than the cost. It allows one to see the world more clearly, to solve problems that others ignore, and to contribute to humanity in ways that will outlast a lifetime. It may come with loneliness at times, but it also comes with the ability to change lives, to build things that matter, and to leave a lasting impact. If you have ever felt out of place because of how deeply you think, know that you are not alone. The greatest minds in history all faced similar struggles, and yet they persisted. Society does not always welcome intelligence, but it needs it. Those who push humanity forward are rarely appreciated in their time, but they are the ones who leave their mark on history. So, if you ever find yourself doubting whether your intelligence is a blessing or a curse, remember this: the world is built by those who refuse to stop thinking. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and never let the fear of rejection stop you from seeing the world for what it truly is. So, what does all of this mean for you? If you've ever felt isolated because of your thoughts, if you've ever found yourself frustrated at how the world prioritizes confidence over intelligence, or if you've ever been dismissed for questioning what others blindly accept, you are not broken. You are simply ahead of your time. History has shown us that society does not immediately embrace deep thinkers, but it always, eventually, catches up to them. What was once ridiculed as madness becomes accepted as truth. What was once dismissed as unnecessary complexity becomes the foundation of progress. Every great mind, every revolutionary idea, every paradigm shift first faced rejection before reshaping the world. But knowing this doesn't make the struggle any easier, does it? So how do you move forward? The key is not to fight against society, but to understand it. Recognize that not everyone will be ready for deep discussions, and that's okay. Choose your battles. Find your tribe. There are people out there who think like you, who crave depth, who question the same things you do. And when you do engage with the world, learn to communicate in a way that makes your ideas accessible, because the most influential thinkers were not just the most intelligent, but also the best at bridging the gap between genius and understanding. Most importantly, never let the world make you doubt the value of your intelligence. If history has taught us anything, it's that those who think differently are the ones who push humanity forward. You are not alone in this journey. You are part of a legacy, a lineage of thinkers, rebels, and visionaries who saw the world not just for what it is, but for what it could be. If this video resonated with you, let's keep the conversation going in the comments. Have you ever felt disconnected because of the way you think? Have you ever been told you overthink things, or that you should just go with the flow? Let me know. I read every comment. And if you found this video valuable, help spread these ideas by liking, sharing, and subscribing. It really helps more than you know. And if you'd like to support the channel further and keep these deep discussions coming, consider dropping a super thanks or joining our community as a channel member. Your support allows us to keep making the kind of content that challenges mainstream thinking. Thank you for watching, for thinking, and for being part of this journey. Until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and never stop thinking deeply.